My name is Kath. I am known as Tugboat Cathy. I'm a storyteller by profession, and I also have an antiquarian and second-hand bookshop in New Brighton called Literally. But I'm known as Tugboat Cathy because of this tugboat that we are sitting on at the moment. She's a 1937 Yarwoods vessel. Her name is France Hayhurst, the original name, named after the trustees of the River Weaver and the Ship Canal. 1937, she's about 65 tons. She's very unusual, one of the first diesel tugs. She was designed to pull the dumb barges with salt on. Originally. Then she was used as a maintenance vessel, but she was designed with a wheelhouse midships, which is very unusual for a tug. And why they did that was because they realised this was going to be quite a special vessel. She was one of the first diesels, and also she was being named after the family, because both their male heirs had unfortunately lost their lives in the First World War. So this was a way of keeping the family name alive, and a very important vessel she was. She had at the time a mahogany stateroom, which we're sitting on top of at the moment. I have to say now it's not mahogany lined, but I've done it as best I can. And she's a very roomy vessel, very versatile. We don't know what she did in the war. That's the only gap I have. I really don't know what she did. I'm trying to find out. She was sold by accident when, after British Waterways were formed, they continued until the 1980s with lots of different vessels, and then some idiot decided to sell her. She should never have been sold. She went into private hands, and she was sailed round the coast to York to become a pleasure vessel for day trippers. That's how I knew she could do the journey. So when I found her many years later, 10 years ago, she was in a very sorry state. She'd been abandoned, she'd had vandals attend to her, and she really had seen better days, needed a lot of work, and I took her on as a project. It took me 3 years, and then we did the reverse of the journey, sailing up to Scotland, through the Caledonian Canal and back to Liverpool. Now she has her mooring permanently in the Albert Dock. She's a National Historic vessel. I'm very proud of that. The wheelhouse is not the original wheelhouse because that sadly had been too far gone when the ship was wrecked. This one has come from a trawler, a fishing trawler. Eventually I plan to try and replace it and make it more appropriate to the age of the vessel, but at the moment it'll do fine, and it did look after us very well when we were bringing the boat round. Originally, the vessel would have had her engine midships. You can see here, the funnel was originally here, the wheelhouse was smaller, and the engine room would have been under here. But round about 1950, I think, British Waterways, as they'd then been formed, decided to re-engine her, and they re-engined her aft. So the crew's quarters, which was just there, where those windows are there, the doghouse, that was turned into the engine room, and this freed up this whole area here. So this is now currently my saloon area. We have water ballast tanks for freshwater tanks which I had made, which actually go underneath us here, that are built into the sides of the ship. And that's our area for housing crew, if we need crew when we're sailing. It also meant that the funnel was no longer needed, so when we got the bigger wheelhouse, we attached it to the funnel, and that's where our staircase is that takes us down below deck. Most recently, we've had an awful lot of different people on the boat from time to time, but just very, very recently, we've been welcoming the Maritime Radio Association. And the society here have been maintaining radios and putting on exhibitions and basically letting anybody know how radios work at sea for many, many years. They were until very recently housed on the lightship Planet, which sadly left our docks probably for the last time this week, which meant, of course, that the society themselves didn't have anywhere for a base. This tug seemed to make a great base, so we've now got them on board and they are readying the vessel for their equipment to come along, and they will be starting to, whether they broadcast or listen or whatever it is they're going to be doing with their equipment, they will be doing it from this tugboat. Here we are. This is my galley. I'm very proud of it, although it's not at all tidy. And oh, look what we found. Oh,
Oh dear. Marine Radio Museum Society.
I thought they might have gone by now. I just found them floating adrift in the dock, fished them out, dried them off nicely, and they're doing quite well in here. Just watch this step. Watch your step. Getting a little bit dark. Our central heating boiler is in there. And then this cabin was in fact the main, the state cabin. But it's surprisingly roomy, everyone says so. And it's a very versatile space. We have a false ceiling here which we can lift up. And that goes into the red forward deck on the hold there, the forward hold. That's where that goes into. So that can all collapse down and it lets light in, and you can get heavy articles in and out. I deliberately built the bed to be above water level because I don't like sleeping below water. Just funny that way. So that's that. You can see through here, you can just about see the airtight door for the engine room. The engine is a 6-cylinder air-cooled Lister engine, very unusual, and very roomy. You can walk about in it. I'm working in there currently at the moment. We've got a lot of rust conversion to do, so we're not going to go in there today, but maybe a couple of weeks' time or a week, you might be able to come down and have a look at it. It's an unusual engine. My family had a navigation school in Everton over 100 years ago, and my grandfather was a skipper with coastlines for 50 years. This is his vessel, which was one of the coastlines. I think that one is the Antrim coast or the Arklow coast. Anglian coast, that one. Anglian coast. He was on the Antrim coast, the Arklow coast, and the Kentish coast, I think. These are his logbooks from 1945, 1946. He famously beached his vessel to get petrol to the Americans during the war. It's still brilliant mooring in the dock. It's not quite the same as it used to be. When I first arrived, there were many people living on boats, as I was at the time, and we did have some characters. We had some very interesting vessels. It's become harder. Obviously, it becomes more expensive, and Albert Dock is very much a tourist area, and although most of the tourists that I see are happy to look at boats and enjoy boats, it's often seen as not being the main draw for people coming to the dock. So when you're doing work, if you're trying to get anything done on board the vessel, it can be quite difficult because clearly you don't want to be using heavy machinery and causing a huge racket while people are trying to get on with their daily lives in their houses. Up on this side of the dock we have all the residential properties, then we have businesses all around the other side, and there also are as well lots of late night businesses. It is a nighttime economy for the dock in terms of stag and hen parties, things like that. We've seen a change in the way the dock operates, which I think will probably change again, because it needs surely to be a mix of lots of different things. That's my view anyway. But as long as they still allow the boats to be here, and as long as we've got a home here, I'll be perfectly happy, because when you look, how could you not be looking out on that?